The door creaked open, the sound slicing through the heavy silence of the room. My heart skipped a beat, as if my body already knew what was about to happen. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I could feel her presence even before she stepped inside. It had been months. Months of sleepless nights, of questions that never found answers, of staring at the empty side of the bed where she used to lie. Our marriage, once full of promises and shared dreams, had crumbled in a way I couldn't have imagined. The betrayal had cut deeper than any wound, leaving scars I hadn't known how to heal. But in the end, she left. She chose to walk away, leaving me with nothing but memories of what we used to be. And now, here she was, standing in front of me as if time had never passed. She looked the same, those familiar eyes, that same smile that once made my world feel whole. But the look in her eyes wasn't the same. There was something different. It was as if she thought she could just step back into my life, and everything would go back to how it was. Like nothing had happened. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but the anger bubbled up too quickly. My mind raced, recalling every broken promise, every lie, every moment of pain. I should have been angry, but I was just numb to her presence, to her words. Get out. I heard myself say, my voice cold, steady, but laced with something darker. She didn't even blink. I had no idea how much that one sentence would change everything. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I couldn't imagine a world without her, without the warmth of her touch, the laughter we shared over simple things, the way her presence made everything feel right. But somewhere along the way, everything changed. We used to be so good together. I remember our first apartment, the one we found right after we got married. It was small, a little run down, but it was ours. We painted the walls together, picking colors we both liked, and spent nights cooking dinner in a tiny kitchen, laughing as we bumped into each other while trying to figure out a new recipe. But then, as time went on, the laughter started to fade. The late-night talks turned into uncomfortable silences, and the dreams we once talked about so freely seemed to disappear into the background of our busy, mundane lives. I thought it was just a phase, that we were simply going through the motions, but the cracks were there. I ignored them. We both did. She started staying late at work. Then it was business trips that turned into long weekends. I remember one night she came home, eyes tired and distant, and when I asked her how her day had been, she simply said, "Fine," before retreating into our bedroom. It wasn't the first time I noticed a distance, but it was the first time I felt the sharp sting of it. I told myself I was overreacting, that things would get better, that we would work through it. But deep down, I could sense that something was wrong. The first real crack in the foundation came one evening when she came home later than usual. I had just finished dinner and was sitting on the couch, staring at the half-empty plate in front of me. She didn't even apologize for being late. Instead, she sat across from me, eyes distant, lost in thought. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice betrayed the tightness in my chest. She hesitated for a long moment before shaking her head. "I don't know anymore," she whispered. That was the moment when I realized things had gone too far. The woman I married, the person I once knew so intimately, was now a stranger to me. I didn't know if it was the pressure of life or she was simply growing tired of me, but her words hung in the air like a cloud, heavy and suffocating. Weeks passed and the tension grew. I tried to talk to her, but every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. She shut me out more and more, retreating into herself. The fights became more frequent. We argued about stupid things, but it wasn't really about the things we were fighting over. It was about the things we weren't talking about. One night, she came home unusually late again. It was past midnight, and I had already gone to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering where she was. I heard the door creak open and the soft click of her shoes against the floor. When she stepped in the bedroom, I sat up, my heart racing. "Where were you?" The words came out sharper than I intended. She froze, her hand on the doorknob. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she replied, "I was with someone." I felt the floor drop out from under me, and a cold wave of disbelief washed over me. With someone? I repeated, unable to process what she was saying. What do you mean? Who? She didn't meet my gaze. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, and I could see her hands trembling. I don't know, she said, her voice cracking. I just needed to be with someone. I'm sorry. The word stung, but it wasn't the apology that hurt. It was a resignation in her voice, as though she had already given up on us long before that night. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers, but all I could do was sit there numb as the realization settled in. She had already checked out of our marriage. I was just the last one to know. The following weeks felt like a blur. We tried to talk about what happened, but it was clear that something fundamental had broken. She said she loved me, but I didn't feel it anymore, not in the way we once had. She seemed distant, disconnected, almost like a shadow of the person I had married. I wanted to fight for us. I tried to convince her that we could fix things, that we could find our way back. But every time I reached for her, it felt like I was grasping at air. She wasn't the same woman anymore, and I wasn't the same man. The love we once had was buried under a mountain of unspoken words and broken promises. And then one day, she told me she needed to leave. No fight, no drama, just a quiet, final decision. She said she didn't know who she was anymore, and maybe I didn't either. And just like that, she was gone. The air in the room felt thick with tension, every second dragging out like an eternity. I stared at her, almost afraid to believe what my eyes were telling me. It had been months since I last saw her, since she walked out of our home, our lives. And yet, there she was, standing in the doorway like she had never left. She looked the same, maybe even better. Her hair, once messy from long nights spent in the midst of our arguments, was now neatly styled. Her clothes were more polished, her smile forced but still familiar. For a moment, I couldn't bring myself to speak. The shock was suffocating, numbing my thoughts. "Hi," she said, her voice light and almost casual, as if it had only been a few days since she last walked through that door. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you doing here?" The words came out, sharp and cold. Before I could stop them, she took a step forward, hesitating as if gauging my reaction. I know it's been a long time. I needed to see you. I didn't know who else to turn to. I couldn't breathe. How could she just show up like this, after everything that had happened, after the way she'd left me without so much as a goodbye, without even trying to work through things? The anger I'd buried for months rose like a tidal wave. "What do you mean, see me?" I almost laughed bitterly. "You just, what? Walking like nothing happened? Like you didn't destroy everything?" Her face fell, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. But it was fleeting, and in its place, a wave of indifference took over. She shrugged slightly, trying to seem nonchalant. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought maybe we could talk, clear the air. I've changed, you know? I've had time to think, to figure things out." I shook my head. The words caught in my throat. "You think it's that easy? That you could just come back, act like you've been gone for a weekend and everything's fine?" She took another step forward, her voice softening, almost pleading. "I never meant for things to end the way they did. You have to understand, I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore, and I made terrible choices. But I've worked through it. I've changed. I'm not the same person I was when I left." I stared at her, fighting the urge to believe her. There was a part of me, buried deep down, that wanted to hear her out, that longed for things to go back to how they were. But then, I remembered the night spent awake, wondering where she was, the way she pulled away from me more and more as the months passed, until there was nothing left but silence. The thought of her with someone else, it made my stomach churn. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" I said, my voice tight with emotion. "You left. You walked away from me. I had to pick up the pieces of my life without you, without any explanation. And now you come back, expecting everything to just reset." She opened her mouth, but the words didn't come out. I could see the hurt in her eyes. But I didn't care anymore. I had spent so long convincing myself that I could move on, that I didn't need her in my life. And yet, there she stood, this ghost from my past, trying to slip back in as though nothing had changed. I crossed my arms over my chest, stepping back, away from her. The air between us felt charged, heavy with all the things we never said, all the things we couldn't say. What do you want, exactly? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You want me to forgive you? Pretend like everything's okay? Because that's not going to happen. Not after what you did. For the first time since you walked in, she seemed to falter. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Was it guilt? Regret? Or was it just desperation? I don't know what I want, she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. I just know that I need to fix this. I've spent so much time thinking about us, about what went wrong. And I know I can't change the past, but maybe we could start over? We could try again. Please. I felt my breath catch in my throat, the weight of her words pushing down on me. I wanted to say something, anything, that might offer a hint of closure, of understanding. But instead, all that came out was a bitter laugh, sharp and hollow. Start over? I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to come back and just pretend like it's all fixable with conversation. I'm not your second chance. The silence that followed was deafening, a heavy curtain falling between us. I could see the look of shock on her face. Her mouth parted as if she was searching for the right words. But there was nothing left to say. Nothing she could say to undo the damage. The room felt suffocating as her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation and hope. I stood across from her, my arms crossed tightly over my chest, trying to keep the storm of emotions inside from spilling over. The tension between us was unbearable. I could see it in her eyes. She was waiting for me to give her a chance, to offer forgiveness, to somehow make it all better. But there was no way to erase the past, no way to undo the damage she had done. Start over? I repeated, my voice low, barely containing the anger that bubbled beneath the surface. You think we can just start over like nothing happened? You think you can walk back into my life and pretend that everything's fine? Her eyes flickered with guilt, but it was fleeting, gone before I could truly catch it. I know I hurt you, she said quietly, almost in a whisper. I know what I did was wrong, and I regret it every day. But we were good once, weren't we? I want that back. I want us back. I shook my head. The pain of her betrayal felt fresh, as though it had happened yesterday, not months ago. Good? We were good? Is that what you call it? My voice cracked as I spoke, and I could feel the rage building inside me. You walked away. You walked out on me. I was here, waiting, trying to hold things together, but you were gone. Gone with no explanation, no warning, just nothing. She flinched, her face pale, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. The words would never be enough to fix what she had done. Not in 1,000 years. I begged you, you know. I begged you to talk to me, to tell me what was going on. I continued, my voice rising now, each word tumbling out in a flood of emotion. I tried to understand. I tried to make sense of it all. But you chose silence. You chose to shut me out. And when you finally left, you didn't even give me a reason. You just walked out, and I was left standing there, looking at an empty house and wondering where the hell everything went wrong. The anger in me was sharp, raw, like a wound that hadn't fully healed. I had pushed it down for so long, buried it under the surface, but now it was all pouring out in a torrent. I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered, her voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to fix things. I was scared. I was confused. And I did something I shouldn't have, something I regret for the rest of my life. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding in my chest. And what exactly was that? What did you do? I asked, my voice now barely more than a growl. You didn't just hurt me. You betrayed me. You left me emotionally and physically. And for what? To find yourself? To chase some fantasy that had nothing to do with the life we built together? Her head dropped, her gaze fixed on the floor. The shame was evident in the way her shoulders slumped, but it didn't make me feel better. Nothing could make me feel better. Tell me the truth. I demanded, my voice shaking with emotion. Tell me what happened. What did you do while you were gone? There was a long silence. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, it was like the words were choking her. I was with someone else, she said, almost too quietly to hear. It wasn't planned. It just happened, and I hate myself for it. I do, but it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what I wanted. The confession hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't breathe. I could feel my blood running cold as I processed her words. I had suspected it. Hell, I had known it. But hearing her say out loud was a different kind of betrayal. It made everything more real, more painful. You were with someone else, I said, the words thick in my mouth. While I was sitting here, alone, wondering where you were with him? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A huge mistake. I was confused, and I thought it would make the pain go away, but it didn't. It only made everything worse. I lost myself, and I lost you. I felt a cold, empty feeling deep inside me. This was the truth I had been avoiding. The thing I didn't want to know. The thing I had convinced myself didn't matter anymore. But it did. It mattered more than anything. You broke me, I said, my voice hoarse with emotion. You took everything from me. And now, you expect me to just forgive you? To pretend that I can just forget all of this? That we can move on like it was nothing? She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off, my anger reaching its peak. No, I can't do that. I can't just let it go. Not like you think I should. My voice cracked, and for a moment, I thought I might actually break down in front of her. You can't just waltz back into my life and expect me to pick up where we left off. It doesn't work like that. She took a shaky breath, her face crumpling with regret and sorrow. I never thought it would be easy. I never thought you'd forgive me. But I had to try. I had to try to make things right, even if it meant losing you for good. The words hit me harder than anything she had said. In that moment, I realized that this was a final point of no return. There was no going back, no repairing what was broken. She was gone, and I was left to piece together the fragments of myself that she had shattered. Goodbye, I said, my voice cold, my heart heavy. This is over. The door slammed behind her with finality that echoed through the empty house. I stood there, staring at the space she had once occupied, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. The silence was deafening, but it was also a kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. I had thought that confronting her would bring some kind of closure, some resolution to the pain she had caused. But instead, I realized that the real closure wasn't in her words, her apologies, or her promises of change. It was in me, finally acknowledging that I didn't need her to heal, that I could survive without the woman who had once been everything to me. I sank down onto the couch, my hands trembling as I rubbed my face, trying to process what had just happened. I had spent so much time holding on to the past, to the woman she used to be, that I had lost sight of who I was becoming. The version of myself that had been buried under the weight of guilt, anger, and regret was still there. I could feel him waking up slowly, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a long storm. I had been angry, yes. I had been hurt, confused, and lost. But now I felt something else, something I hadn't expected. Freedom. It wasn't the kind of freedom I had imagined, filled with anger or revenge. It was the quiet freedom of letting go. Letting go of the past, of the pain of her. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild, slowly, piece by piece. I wasn't sure where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to face it. Alone, yes, but free. It's funny how life has a way of pushing you to your breaking point, only to show you who you really are when you least expect it. I thought the end of my marriage would destroy me. I thought that losing her, the woman I had shared my life with, would be the end of me, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of something new, something I never could have anticipated. The days after she left were the hardest, no doubt. I spent so many nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out where things went wrong. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted closure. And for a while, I thought that closure could only come from her, that if she could just explain herself, apologize, maybe I could find a way to forgive her, to move on. But after that last confrontation, I realized something important. Closure doesn't come from someone else. It comes from you, from the decision to stop waiting for someone else to make things right, and to take control of your own healing. I stopped searching for reasons, for apologies, for explanations. I stopped wondering why she left or why things had to end the way they did. I started focusing on myself, on rebuilding the life I had lost. And it wasn't easy. There were days when the weight of the past was overwhelming, days when I wanted to just shut it all out and bury the pain. But I didn't. I faced it. I faced the broken pieces of myself and began putting them back together. And as time passed, I found that I wasn't just putting myself back together. I was creating a new version of myself, one that was stronger, wiser, and more whole than before. The man I had been with her was gone, and the man I was becoming was someone I could be proud of. I've learned that true strength isn't in holding on. It's in letting go. Letting go of the past, of the pain, of the people who couldn't see your worth. And with every step I take forward, I realize that I don't need anyone's permission to live my life. I don't need anyone to validate me. I am enough. I always was. And as I look ahead to the future, I realize that for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of it. Whatever comes next, I'll face it with my head held high, knowing that I have everything I need inside me to keep moving forward. Alone, yes, but finally at peace.